All right, now let's see how we can set padding using XAML. So in the last lecture, you learned that padding is a property of the page, and we can set it to a thickness object like this. And obviously, this applies to all platforms. Now, if you want to apply this padding using XAML, we can easily do so like this. So for our content page element, we set the padding attribute to a string literal. Now at runtime, XAML parser will get this string and give it to a type converter, which will parse this into a thickness object. And again, this will apply to all platforms. Now, what if we want to apply this only to iOS? Then we need to use an element called onPlatform. onPlatform. And this element has attributes like iOS, Android, and so on. But the problem is we cannot use this element as the value of the padding attribute, because these values, as you have seen so far, are either simple strings or XAML markup extensions, but they cannot be an XML element. That's when we use a special syntax in XAML called property element syntax. Let me show you how it works. So first I'm going to remove this attribute. Now inside content page element, I'm going to add another element, content page dot padding. So I'm using an XML element instead of an XML attribute to set the padding property. And that's the reason this syntax is called property element syntax, because we set C# properties using XML elements, not attributes. Now inside this element, I can either add a simple string, or I can add another element to represent a complex object. In this case, I want to use onPlatform element. So I can take this here and move it right here. Now this onPlatform element maps to a C# class. Let me show you. So back in code behind, I'm just going to declare a temporary variable, new onPlatform. So this is a generic class. And here we need to supply the generic parameter. So I'm going to use thickness here. Now this class has properties like Android, iOS, and so on. Now I can get this onPlatform object and assign it to padding. There will be an implicit conversion between onPlatform object and thickness object. Okay? So we want to achieve the same thing in XAML. When creating this onPlatform object, we need to specify the generic argument. So we use another attribute here, X type arguments. And we set this to thickness. Again, to emphasize, because this is prefixed with X, it belongs to Microsoft namespace and is part of the standard XAML that was first introduced in year 2009. So this line in XAML is exactly like this line in C#. Okay, now we need to set properties of our onPlatform object. So back in XAML, for iOS, I'm going to use 0, 20, 0, 0. And to refresh your memory, these numbers represent left, top, right, and bottom. In the last video, I referred to these numbers as pixels, but the reality is it's not a pixel. For now, for simplicity, imagine these are pixels. So now using this technique, I can apply various paddings on different platforms. I can apply another padding for Android, and similarly for Windows if you ever need to. So to recap this video, we use property element syntax when we are dealing with complex objects that cannot be represented using simple strings.